Imagine you go to sleep one night, a respected soldier, a banker, a man of God. You wake up in chains, no warning, no charges you recognize, no trial. Just boots kicking in the door before sunrise and hands dragging you into the dark. Now imagine that happening to every single one of your brothers simultaneously across an entire country. That is what happened on the morning of October 13th, 1307. And the man who ordered it wasn't an enemy. He was the king you had protected, the man your order had financed, the man who had eaten at your table 2 days before. This is the story of the greatest betrayal in medieval history. And it starts, as most great betrayals do, with money. On Friday, October 13th, 1307, at dawn, every Knight Templar in France was arrested simultaneously. Not one or two, not a regional sweep, every single Templar, in every city, at the exact same moment. That kind of coordination, in the 14th century, required months of secret planning, thousands of royal agents given sealed orders they weren't allowed to open until the night before, one of the most elaborate covert operations in medieval history, and it was ordered by a king who owed the Templars a fortune. The Knights Templar were not just soldiers, they were the most powerful military order in the world, and the world's first international banking system. A crusader leaving Paris could deposit his gold with the Templars, ride 2,000 miles to Jerusalem, and withdraw it on arrival. No gold transported, no risk of robbery on the road, just a letter of credit. The first in history. They built this system across every Christian nation in Europe. They financed kings, they financed wars, they financed the Crusades themselves. By 1300, they were untouchable. They answered only to the Pope. No king could tax them, no court could try them. They had their own laws, their own prisons, their own army, which made them, to the right kind of king, extremely dangerous. To understand how dangerous they had become, consider this. The Templars owned land in every Christian country in Europe. Farms, castles, ports, entire villages. They had their own fleet of ships, their own network of roads, their own system of courts. When a king went to war, he didn't go to a bank. He went to the Templars. When a crusade needed funding, the Pope didn't raise taxes. He went to the Templars. When Richard the Lionheart needed to pay a ransom, 150,000 silver marks. It was the Templars who organized it. They had become, quietly and without anyone quite noticing, the financial backbone of the entire Christian world. No single king could destroy them alone. It would take a king, a pope, and 7 years of coordinated lies to bring them down. Philip IV of France was not a patient man. He had borrowed enormous sums from the Templars to fund his wars, sums he could not repay, and unlike every other creditor in Europe, the Templars were not afraid of him. In 1306, he had been driven out of Paris by his own people, rioting over taxes. He took refuge, humiliatingly, inside the Templar fortress in the city. He watched their wealth from the inside. He started planning the arrests that same year. To destroy the Templars legally, Philip needed the Pope. Unfortunately for him, he had one. Pope Clement V was a Frenchman, elected with Philip's backing, living not in Rome, but in Avignon, inside French territory, inside French influence. Philip presented Clement with a list of charges against the Templars: heresy, devil worship, obscene initiation rituals, spitting on the cross, sodomy, idol worship of a severed head called Baphomet. The charges were almost certainly fabricated, but they were spectacular. And Clement, whether out of belief, fear, or political calculation, signed the arrest orders. The morning of October 13th came fast. Templars were dragged from their beds before sunrise. The Grand Master himself, Jacques de Molay, was arrested in Paris. A man who had dined with the king 2 days earlier, who had carried the royal coffin at a state funeral that same week. He was taken to the dungeon. What followed was months of torture. The rack, the strappado, where a man's hands are tied behind his back and he is hoisted by the wrists until the shoulders dislocate. Sleep deprivation, starvation. Under torture, Templars confessed to everything: heresy, the rituals, Baphomet, all of it. Most recanted the moment the torture stopped, said they had confessed to lies to make the pain end. It didn't matter. The confessions were on record. In 1312, Pope Clement formally dissolved the Order of the Knights Templar. 200 years of history, wiped from existence by a single papal decree. Their land was seized, their assets transferred, their members scattered. Jacques de Molay spent 7 years in prison. In 1314, he was brought out publicly to read his confession before a crowd in Paris. A final humiliation designed to close the chapter. Instead, he recanted. Loudly, in front of everyone, he declared the order innocent. He declared himself innocent. He said the only crimes he had committed were lying about the Templars to save himself from torture. Philip had him burned at the stake that same evening. According to legend, Jacques de Molay spoke from the flames. He called out Philip IV and Pope Clement V by name, said they would answer before God within the year. Pope Clement died 33 days later. King Philip IV was dead before the year was out, killed in a hunting accident at 46 in good health with no warning. But here is the part that history quietly glosses over. When the arrests happened on October 13th, 1307, the Templar fleet was not in port. 18 ships docked at La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast. The Templars' entire naval power, gone, vanished overnight, never found, never explained. The Templar treasury in Paris, which should have been one of the largest accumulations of wealth in Europe, was empty when Philip's men opened it. Some say the fleet went to Scotland, some say Portugal, some say the treasure is still buried, and point to Oak Island off the coast of Nova Scotia, where people have been digging for 300 years. The truth is, we don't know. What we know is this: the most powerful military order in history was destroyed in a single morning by a king who owed them money. Their Grand Master was burned alive for telling the truth. Their fleet and their fortune disappeared without trace. And the day it happened, Friday the 13th, has been considered unlucky ever since. The Knights Templar were gone, officially. But organizations with 200 years of history, global networks, hidden treasure, and a fleet of vanished ships don't simply cease to exist because a pope signs a piece of paper. In the next episode, we follow those 18 ships. Where did they go? What were they carrying? And why, 700 years later, people are still digging a hole on a remote island off the coast of Canada, convinced the answer is buried somewhere at the bottom. If you want to know what happened to the Templar fleet, subscribe. Because that story is even stranger than this one.